Wow. What a group. So I feel like the guinea pig here coming up first. I thank you all for being here. And what I'm going to talk about today is cloud security, but from probably a different angle than many of us are looking at it. So when we talk about cloud security, typically we're looking at Azure, AWS. How do we take the stuff that we're building inside of our environment, putting it up into the cloud, and then, adding some security to it? That's not what I'm talking about. Basically, I'm looking at the other side of it. How do we protect all the warm bums and seats that we have within our corporations from all the other services that they're going to on the internet? Somewhere around 60% of our workforce today does most of their work outside of the perimeter that we've built. So we collectively have been putting money into building perimeters, firewalls, intrusion detection prevention, URL filtering, mail gateways, VPN gateways, all that stuff that we've done to make this nice, cushy security blanket around our data centers and around our offices. And then we hear that more than 60% of our workforce are actually outside of that. And oh, by the way, they're not VPNing back in because the stuff that they're actually talking to is also out there. Okay. So again, we've built these perimeters mostly for audit. Okay. So we know we need to be secure and whatever, and we've put a bunch of stuff in there. But a lot of what we've done has been to appease auditors, and that's been sort of the direction of the financial flow into building our perimeters. And we've done some really cool things around code of conduct, so URL filtering, who can go where. But it's all based on these warm bums and seats sitting inside of this perimeter and getting access to systems that are also inside the perimeter. And most of the interaction that they're doing outside is controlled through your firewall. And you can see that, and you can log against that. Okay, that's all good. That's fantastic. But when I'm sitting at a Starbucks with my laptop and I need to go to Salesforce, I'm not VPNing back into the data center to do that. There's no sense in that. I'm going directly to Salesforce. I'm going to Concur. I'm going to Workday. I'm doing Office 365 on my laptop, on my tablet, on my phone, directly to Microsoft. I'm not coming back in to do that. Guess who doesn't get to see that traffic? Okay? So most of us have set up rules, to basically VPN all that traffic in. Bring it all back in-house, no matter where you are. If you're sitting in a hotel in Singapore, if you're off in Ireland, if you're down in the States, we're going to backhaul all that traffic through VPN so that we can apply filters and rules. Does that make an awful lot of sense? Right? So you're doubling the traffic, you're bringing everything back into your data center, doubling the traffic in, doubling the traffic out, just so that you can see some of the stuff. And then you're going to have to do all the SSL decrypt, and it's just an absolute mess. Okay? Reality is, this is where our business is going right now. You may have some apps on the inside. Absolutely. You've got apps on the inside of your data center that you need your workforce to get to. But most of our business is email. Ajay was saying earlier, it's the number one attack surface, but it's also the number one tool that most of our workforce uses. And we're now beyond 70% of corporations have picked up Office 365, and that's just exponentially growing, okay? We're going to get to a point where all of our email sits outside of our environment, okay? And what happens with email? That's all of our attachments. That's all of our crown jewels, forecasting and anything and everything that we do as a business, okay, somehow gets attached to email, and by proxy, oh, no pun intended there, ends up sitting outside of our internet or our local network out in Microsoft land, okay? Dropbox, Box, Drive, OneDrive, all of these storage containers again, are outside of our environment. So about 4 or 5 years ago, Gartner took a look at this. What is the industry doing to basically shore up this perimeter deficiency? Okay, and there were a couple of companies. Earliest started about 2011. Okay, there were a few companies that were looking at providing perimeter-style services for your workforce for these cloud-based, web-based services. Okay, so Gartner came up with these 4 pillars. Visibility. So can I see the traffic from these remote devices going to these remote services? Okay. Security. If I've got crown jewels, or if I've got corporate data of any sort sitting out in the internet and services that don't belong to me, what opportunity do I have to secure that traffic? Okay. Threat prevention. How am I going to stop threats that are, basically from services out on the internet laterally to mobile devices, again, not inside of my perimeter, and regulatory compliance. Okay, financial institutions are big time adopting cloud services. How do I maintain regulatory compliance for the data that's out there for the people that are reaching it out there? Okay, so a number of companies basically set up shop and started providing services. It was very granular at first, granular. It was very coarse. Basically, we're going to set up a series of proxies, and we're going to funnel you through, and we're going to look just like the URL filters that you're using inside your network. Okay, and we're going to start generating reports and feeding them back to your administrators on a infrequent basis at first. Okay, so the Cosby service providers came up with these sort of 3 ways of controlling traffic. Okay, first way is a forward proxy, same proxy that we're all used to. How many people know Squid? Squid proxy? Yeah, look at all these hands. Good job. Okay, so Squid is the de facto proxy. It's been around forever. Microsoft has their own variant on this, but basically this is a hang on, I'll get to it in a second. I'm overstepping myself here. Okay, so we got forward proxies. Basically, take warm bums and seats, mobile devices, internal devices, and feed them through a channel and direct them to resources outside, and can monitor and see all that traffic and basically do things with the traffic, but it sees everything. Okay. Reverse proxy is the exact opposite. So reverse proxy takes all those warm bums and seats and allows them a funnel to come back into the network in a safe, controlled, compliance way. Okay? And then API connectivity is sort of the new piece on this, where the service providers, ServiceNow, Office 365, Workday Concur, Salesforce, they provide a series of rules, APIs, that the access broker can connect to and provide filtering and control. Okay, so we want to talk about context. So all of these access brokers that are out there now, and we'll talk about specifics in a bit, but the access broker regime basically needs a way of understanding who you are, where you're coming from, what time of day it is, okay, what type of network you're on, and all these things kind of make sense in the general context of, should I allow this transaction that's going on right now to actually happen, okay? So if I've got a corporate laptop and I'm sitting inside my corporate network and I'm going to any one of these services, I would expect to be unfettered, okay? By my role in Active Directory, I should be able to get to Office 365 and do my mail. I should be able to get to Salesforce. I should be able to create tickets in ServiceNow, unfettered, as if I were sitting in the office, because, well, that's what I am. Now, if I take that same corporate laptop with my credentials and I go home and I log in from my home network, I would expect the access broker to ask for a second factor of authentication automatically. I'm no longer on the corporate network. I do have a credentialed device, and I personally am credentialed. However, it doesn't know my network. Okay, so give me the second factor. I take that same corporate laptop with my same credentials, and I go into a Starbucks. This is now a higher risk network. Not only do I give the second factor of authentication, but maybe we're going to restrict so that I can't do printing, I can't do screenshots, I can't grab a file locally, okay? Can't do attachments. So that level of granular access is context aware now, okay? Does this make sense to people? Or, you're a very quiet crowd, okay? Yep. Basically, I'm just talking about this. So if I were on a personal laptop, okay, using my corporate credentials, I would expect my experience to be different than the corporate laptop. I would expect I might be able to do email. I might be able to log into Salesforce or Workday, but that the level of access that I would have would be extremely limited because of the device that I'm on. Okay? Context also allows us to do things that you're seeing with the banks and your credit cards. So at 9 a.m., I logged in from my corporate network, and it authenticated me and allowed me to conduct business. At 9:15, all of a sudden I credentialed in from Singapore. Maybe this isn't appropriate. Maybe we should block that. Maybe we should send a note to the person's manager or to the security team saying, Michael just logged in 15 minutes after being in Toronto. He logged in from Singapore. Is this appropriate? Is this a realistic request? And get that second factor in the workflow. Okay. So the forward proxy is kind of the workhorse of the access brokers today. Okay, it's the tool that they use. It's a series of machines sitting out in the cloud, AWS, Azure, wherever, sitting outside of your environment, and through the use of a single sign-on entity, Ping, Okta, Centrify, ADFS, Azure AD. They give that context. So the single sign-on provider gives the context to your CASB, and then the CASB uses that context to basically figure out what level of authentication and what level of authorization to give you. So it'll go back to your Active Directory, figure out what your role is, and then on a transaction-by-transaction basis, throttle you down or ramp you up. Okay? All of these services and more that are out in the cloud are covered through this forward proxy. Now, one of the other really neat things that it does, because all transactions go through it, is this whole concept of shadow IT. Who does not know shadow IT? Any hands? Okay. So shadow IT are non-sanctioned applications, applications that your company has not signed up for. Really, really interesting thing. So I worked for an insurance company, significant insurance company here in Canada, and we signed up for Box, okay? Wanted to get Box corporate on a proof of concept. And so I signed up, 90-day proof of concept, and about 30 days in, my manager, the account rep at Box went, by the way, would you like to know the 1,200 other corporate email addresses that have also signed up for Box and are using it personally? Through the forward proxy, that just shows up. So when somebody goes to Box and they don't have a sanctioned account, I'll know about it. I'll get a report. When they go to LinkedIn or any of these others, I can see where they're going. Facebook's a big one. So you can allow fairly coarse access into Facebook, but you can lock down certain portions of it so that from a social aspect, you can control your brand. Okay? And that's a big deal. Okay. I always talk in front of myself, so I apologize. Corporate code of conduct, URL filtering. So you can use the forward proxy to block malicious sites by default. You can say my code of conduct doesn't allow us to go to gambling or hate crime sites, and the Cosby will provide that filter for you, even when your warm bum in a seat is outside of your perimeter. So those same code of conduct style rules that you would put inside, you can manage devices outside. All of their traffic, okay, sorry, let me correct that. Their traffic doesn't get backhauled. So you don't have bandwidth issues that you have by VPNing everybody in. But all the metadata, okay, of where they're going, when they're going, all that contextual metadata comes back to your SIM, okay? And then you can do work based on that. Unsanctioned apps I talked about. Field level, table level data. So I'm going to Salesforce, and we've got a field in Salesforce that contains a credit card number, okay? On the fly, you can tokenize that data. Does anybody want to go into what tokenization is? We all know tokenization? Okay, cool. That's awesome. So you can tokenize specific fields, and you can do encryption, field level encryption. You can do table level encryption on the fly before it ever gets to Salesforce. This means that you can control the keys. Okay, another very important aspect of securing remote services that you don't have access to. So even in the AWS and the Azure world where you're standing up infrastructure, you've got the opportunity of having those services encrypt for you. Typically, they would own those keys. And I sort of a sidestep here. Sorry, guys, we're all security. Don't let your service provider own the keys. Okay? You have to own those private keys yourself. Department of Homeland Defense. If you have an entity in your Canadian corporation that does business in the US, I'm going to pause. Canadian corporation, if you have an entity that does business in the US, the Department of Homeland Defense has full right and jurisdiction to get access to that data. Full stop. If your service provider owns the keys, when they hand that blob of encrypted data over, they will also hand over those keys. Okay? If you own the keys, the blob gets handed over as per the service provider's obligation. But you don't have to hand those keys over. Those are yours. So they've got a blob that, they may be able to encrypt in 90, 120, 2 years, but you own those keys, okay? Sorry, rant mode off. Okay, reverse proxy. So reverse proxy is easy. It's what we're doing day in, day out. It is allowing entities from outside of our corporation to come in to services that we're standing up inside. So our own corporate applications. Typically, this would be a point-to-point VPN style, but on a service level, port level, okay? And again, we can control that granularly based on the context. So, I'm on a corporate laptop using my corporate credentials. Bring me in. Let me do whatever I can do based on my role. If I'm using my corporate credentials but on a personal device, again, restrict what I have access to, even to those corporate entities. Okay? I don't have an awful lot more to talk about on that one. It's fairly typical. And again, talking in front of myself. The shadow IT piece is a big deal. It really is. These are all of the applications that corporations get to. Now, if you go to the Cosby providers, I'm going to name a few of them, drop some names. So In Canada here, we've got Netscope, we've got BitGlass. There was Adelom. Adelom sold to Microsoft. Our good friends over at Symantec have a couple of services now that they've acquired and have done some fabulous work in augmenting. Definitely be looking at them. All of these companies basically have the ability to monitor the traffic. And if you were to talk to them right now, typical conversation from the Cosby provider would be, do you have any idea how many cloud service systems your employees are going to? And the typical company, typical CISO would say, dozen, 20, okay? And the service provider would say, 11 to 1,700. Okay? And I've seen the numbers. I've signed up for Cosby services in a very, very large global company with about 45,000 warm bums and seats. And the 1,700 was on the low end. Okay? Basically, just about any type of service that sets up on the web right now that gathers credentials and provides some type of business function or business service is something that you want to be watching. Okay? If we're all lazy, okay? We're all lazy. Our credentials are our credentials. How many of us here have more than 5 sets of credentials that they use across the web? Wow. I like that. But we are talking to a security group, okay? When you go further into the business, you might find 3 sets of credentials, okay? You'll find the ones that we're using at our desktop inside of the office. You might find a separate set of credentials that we're using for work-ish stuff out on the web, and then you'll find a set of credentials for all of our social. And that's being generous. Okay? People are lazy by nature and will use the same password for just about everything. So if I find your credentials on a game website, okay, there's a very good chance that those credentials are going to work on 10, 12 other sites that you have access to. Okay? Everybody knows Troy Hunt, right? Okay? Troy Hunt has this whole pwned thing where he's got databases of sites where email accounts and such have been basically broadcast and collected. And it's incredible the number of lateral sites that your credentials are on. Okay? Yep. So current Cosby providers, we got BitGlass, Netscope, SkyHigh is another big one, Cipher Cloud, Cisco bought something called CloudLock. WebSense is still there. Microsoft, Symantec, Zscaler, Palo Alto standing up some services in the realm now. There's a lot of these companies to be looking at. Okay, they're all doing a very, very good job in providing perimeter-style services for your warm bums and seats that are outside your perimeter, talking to all these services. And again, let's go through the numbers. Greater than 60% of your workforce sits outside your perimeter for most of their work, and greater than 53% of services that your warm bums and seats are going to are also outside of your perimeter. Both of those numbers bigger than 50% that you don't have visibility into unless you're using one of these services. Thank you. Appreciate your time.